Well, hello and welcome to the latest episode. And I would call this the vaccine episode of the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. I pray that all of you are doing well, and I appreciate you joining us this evening for our program specifically on this COVID vaccine, the Pfizer COVID vaccine, where we would discuss what my research is so far, what the documents that they have released from the FDA, and also those of you who are interested in gave your vote for the book club, got an update on the book club. So I pray that you all are enjoying that. And I also would like to have a short discussion on the Fauci meeting that just ended a few minutes ago, where Dr. Fauci was on the line with a couple of brothers. One, I think both of them are on this COVID, the Black Coalition Against COVID. One was at Howard University. I'm forgetting what his position is. I'm not sure if it was president or not. But the other person is just on the coalition. I'm not necessarily sure what his position is on there either. But I know he's not one of the main names that put this whole coalition together. But regardless, they had a conversation. So I want to get some feedback from you all on what did you think of the conversation. I missed some of it because I was having some issues getting into it. But the aspect that I did hear, I will comment on. But I definitely want to hear what you all have to say about what you heard on that. There's something else coming up, I think, on Thursday. But I'm not sure if that's during the time of the presentation from FDA or not. I don't remember what time it is. So please, if you all are on the show right now, just give me a real brief shout out and let me know if you can hear me on Facebook and on YouTube. Quickly let me know if you can hear me so that I can officially get started. I'm waiting for you all to let me know, please. AD Electronics, James Williams, Hanif Ali, Shaolin Soldier. I see you all on YouTube. And I see you all on Facebook as well. I know you all are on Facebook. Okay, so all my messages are showing up today. Please, somebody let me know if you can hear well. If everything is coming through video and sound, please. Pure Black, thank you for coming in. Well, I'm going to assume that you all can hear me because you're responding, but please, when you get a chance, please let me know that volume and sound and everything is good. Lester Samuel, thanks for coming in, my brother. So, in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the most merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. We thank him for coming in the person of Master Farah Muhammad, who has given us a man, the ultimate, he is the ultimate, but I was about to say my business, but the ultimate in giving us something to lean on, something to hold on to, and information to empower us during the type of times we live in. I'm speaking none other than that man, the ultimate wellness, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who wrote How to Eat to Live, books 1 and 2. That is the foundation of this show. And of course, neither of them left us alone. They left us with a man who is a light in the darkness, who is guiding us in a time of trouble like no other. And we thank him for his dedication and his stance in these times. Speaking none other than Minister Louis Farrakhan, and their names I greet you in the words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. I wanted to start this evening show by making mention of the fact can hear but a slight audio delay. Yes, I can hear you. You are breaking up. I can hear you, but you are going in and out. I can hear you sporadically. Well, there we go again. I don't know what it is about this place, but looks like this may be the last time I do it here, because I'm always having these issues here and don't have them other places. So I thank you all. I pray that you all can hear enough of the show for it to be legitimate. But starting next week, I probably will be going somewhere else so that you all can hear me well and we can have quality shows. So I apologize for anything that is occurring not at the best quality. Alonzo Thomas Muhammad, Daisy Muhammad, and Khalila Muhammad, thank you for coming in. So I wanted to start today's show by stating that, all of us are actual results of our experience in life, right? We're results of what we grew up around, what we were trained and taught by our parents, and then our experiences, whether it be in a so-called educational system or whether it be in Erica Arizola, Tawana. Okay, thank you all for coming in. You say that's choppy. Okay. But if you have an experience, like let's say going to college, or like for myself, medical school, and then those experiences with other people and those experiences in your particular career, that's what makes you who you are. That's what makes you come up with the conclusions that you come up with in your daily experiences in life and how you handle them. It's all based on those things. And so I just wanted to make it clear that I am not an official spokesman of the Nation of Islam in any form or fashion. I believe that I am a striving member that's trying to give the best information based on my knowledge, based on my wisdom, based on my experience. But I just wanted to say today that although you hear me talk very strongly on those experiences and on my study and on my research, it doesn't mean that my mind isn't capable of being open, because I believe that I can be unbiased and I can be impartial to this information that is coming from the FDA. I believe that I reserve a place in me to always have an open mind. The way that I express and do what I do in 2020 is much different than what I learned in medical school, what I learned in my residency program, which I finished in 1999. And the way that I practiced in my early years of practicing medicine is nothing like what it is that I do today. I think that represents an open mind. But I wanted to mention that today because I want everybody to have the same perspective, right? Should we take in consideration what we learned in that beautiful book right there, Medical Apartheid? Of course we should. That book gave me a beautiful view of what is and what has happened to Black people. And so why am I saying that? Because those of you who listen tonight, right, to Dr. Fauci's meeting with the Black community, you heard, I believe, the last question, and they said that, I should say Dr. Fauci said that we shouldn't be worried about what happened in the past. And I'm paraphrasing. We shouldn't concentrate on what happened in the past. We should concentrate on now and what we can do about making sure that this virus is decreased and that the community is in better health because we made a decision to be vaccinated. Well, Dr. Fauci, that definitely is not the perspective that we as Black people should come from. Because you sat there in this meeting tonight and you talked about these things. You talked and you talked and you talked. But there's been no activity from you or any other government organization, NIH, CDC, the FDA, no organization do I know of has put in the work to gain the Black community's trust. We're not going to depend on you just because you come and you say things. We're not going to depend on you just because these Black medical schools and these Black doctors have have come together and they decided to trust you. We're going to trust you when we see the information that proves to us, and we see the activity that proves to us that we can trust you. And so that's why the minister said, when the vaccine comes out, you use it on your people, and then let us watch what happens, and then we'll come and say whether or not, after we've looked at the information, investigated the information, and then we can come to our own conclusion, not based on what people say, but based on some of our experts. Like, I would say that I am qualified to do some evaluation of a vaccine, but I'm not the most qualified person. The most qualified person are those biomedical scientists that are involved in producing vaccines. And we have some people in the Black community that should be in the forefront. Why is it that the Black Doctors Coalition against COVID didn't go and find some of those professionals to be part of this evaluation? How are you able to look at this mRNA vaccine and the preservatives, or the lack thereof, and this whole process, and act as if you really know? That's not your field of study. The field of study in medicine doesn't take us in depth into vaccines. The honest truth is that most Black physicians, and physicians in general, would have to admit that they do vaccines based on information that is given to them. Not that they have any in-depth information or in-depth understanding of what is happening in that laboratory when you're producing a vaccine. That's the type of trust. That's the type of investigation that we need to have as people, Black people especially, in order to go out here and make a decision on, yes, we're going to take your vaccine. It's not going to be based on your words, Dr. Fauci. And all of these Black people that I saw in the comments, I was on YouTube, and so all of these Black people that are in the comments talking about they trust Dr. Fauci and they're so glad he's a part of it, and they consider him a hero. You know, I would really like for those people to explain how they came to those conclusions, because my research when it comes to Dr. Fauci is that he has been involved in a lot of things over these last many, many years that are highly questionable. On how did he come to those conclusions? How does the Gates Foundation, come to the conclusions? How are they able to predict things? And even some of the statements that are made in this FDA document, which is coming from his source of information, is highly questionable. Highly questionable. And again, it doesn't mean that my mind isn't open. That means that I have to take in consideration, number one, this book gives us a lot of information on what has happened to Black people, brown people, indigenous people, all over the planet. There have been a lot of people that have been misused and abused by these so-called philanthropic government organizations that are supposed to have our health as their primary concern. Number two, personally, my experience is that I have sat and looked in mothers' faces and heard testimonies about what these vaccines did to their children. I will not question these women that were sincere and they know their children. I can't question it. And then third, I have to come to my own conclusion based on my experience and what I have seen when people follow the top book, How to Eat to Live, book 1 and book 2, in when they remove certain things that are commonly in the foods, I've seen much improvement. And so those are the factors that I'm taking in consideration when I look at these vaccines, how fast they have come through this pipeline. And when it comes to this FDA meeting on Thursday, I want to have all of this information read and studied. I'm talking about me personally before this meeting on Thursday. There's a 53-page document and there's a 90-some document. And so we're going to have a short conversation today, but next Tuesday, I will make sure that I'm in, number one, in a good place with Wi-Fi and everything to make sure we have an excellent show as far as audio visual is concerned. But secondly, I will have researched all the information. I will have listened to the entire program. And so on next Tuesday, for those of you who are going to do the same, I'd like you to bring your questions. We're going to have a dialogue. And to be honest with you, I don't know how long that's going to take. So next week's show, I pray that you have a little time in your schedule to dedicate to what it is that we have to do. So Erica Arizona, you said, hi there. Been waiting to hear your perspective on the vaccine. I do have a question because I'm really against the COVID vaccine, and being in healthcare, they want us to receive it next week. I have already had COVID and still carry the antibodies. Although I know that it is not a guarantee of immunity against it, I know chances are a bit slimmer. Again, this is according to research. With that being said, we know how long it takes to complete vaccination studies. So if they are telling me this vaccine is ready, let me see if is that the end of your statement? That's all I have here. But Erica, what I would say in response to your statement is that I am concerned as well. And there are, one of the questions that I have just right off the top is that, to me, this is the first time that I have known personally of a vaccine coming out this quickly, but yet the vaccine is coming out before we even get a chance to look at the information and ask our questions. So my understanding is that this FDA program that is happening on Thursday is because of these black doctors that asked for this information to be given to the public, because the black community is so concerned about this vaccine, right? So they're supposedly doing this to help decrease our being wary of this whole situation. Now, why is it that the Thursday that we are getting this information that many in Chicago, millions of vials have already landed in California, millions of vials have already landed in New York? So how are you really taking our concern into consideration when you already have a mandate, as you're saying, Erica, for doctors to start taking it this week that we're talking about? There are many hospitals, ICUs, emergency departments that are mandating that their employees get this vaccination. And I had a very interesting conversation with my brother, who has been working in the healthcare field for many years. His concern was that how can they vaccinate so many people in the healthcare field? What if there are negative effects? What if, like, let's say 70% of the healthcare workers that are getting this vaccine this week and next week, what if they all get sick from the vaccine? Who's going to be taking care of the people that are coming into the emergency room when we're on this uptick of infections? Who's going to be able to handle the infections in the ICU? Because my understanding is they're not taking in consideration that anybody can get sick. They're taking in consideration a very short period, right? So on that point, let me get to a couple of notes. Because on this information from the FDA, they are saying that there has to be at least 6 weeks to determine what are the effects of this vaccine on the person who's taking it, right? So the information that they give is within 2 months. I'm sorry. So that's 8 weeks. So from their perspective, they have had this phase 3 trial happen long enough to be able to determine what are the effects. But the questions are, what are the 3 month, 6 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, 20 years, right? Because as we discussed in that book, Are Vaccines Safe? And as we're discussing in this book right here, Thimerosal, Let the Science Speak, these are the 3 books that the Ultimate Wellness Group have been discussing over the last 2 to 3 months, right? And when you take the information in these 3 books, we can't be concerned about a vaccine for 6 weeks, 2 months. We have to be more concerned about long term. But specifically to the healthcare practitioners that will be getting it over the next couple of weeks, those symptoms, based on the FDA's information, are injection site reaction, which is 84%, fatigue 63%, headaches 55%, muscle pain 38%, chills 32%, joint pain 24%, fever 14%, and then severe problems, which they didn't specify other than Bell's palsy as one of them, that's at 5%. And so, you know, having injection site reactions at 80% and fatigue at 63%, and headache at 55%, that's a majority of those participants, right? And we're still talking about in that 44,000 people that were included in the study. And as I further went into the information, it really was only based on 36,621 people. I haven't been clarified yet. Now, again, I just told you I'm only on page 12. And so I have a lot more research to do. But at this point in my research, the information of those side effects was only based on 36,000. So, really 37,000 people. What happened with those other, 7,000 people? I'll have to continue doing my research. Maybe I'll have that information by definite time I finish on tomorrow or Thursday. But the reality is that those are the type of things that we need to come to better conclusions, right? And so to say that the vaccination is 95% effective, how did they come to those conclusions? So, as I've said before, they broke it down into two different sections, right? You had the people who had the actual shot, and then you have your placebo, meaning people that did not get the vaccine, right? And so 8 people that got the vaccine got COVID, and 162 people that got the placebo actually got the actual infection, the COVID infection. Now, if you just talk pure science with people that you can trust, that right there is a pretty significant thing to take in consideration. Because think about it. If you say, hey, let's just take 37,000 people, we break that in half, and this half over here get the vaccine, and this other half, they don't get the vaccine. And you say 160 something people get it versus over here, and we're talking in a placebo, right? So they didn't get anything. And then the people that actually got the vaccine, only 8. Now, the other questions that we have to ask is, how did people get infected? Are they living normal lives like everybody? Are they in high risk environments like healthcare workers? Are they people that have taken more chances? Are they older people who are really trying to protect themselves? See, that information we don't have. But again, I haven't gone through this information. But what I'm saying, based on what Eric is saying, you being a person that's in the healthcare field, you are considered a high risk person. I would be considered a high risk person. And so, is that the environment that these placebo people were in? Were they in the healthcare field? Did they live in rural areas? Did they live in the cities that have the highest rates of infection? Are they in states or parts of the country where the infection is low? Are they in, see, all of these type of things are what you have to take in consideration, and you have to consider when you are coming to a conclusion whether or not these numbers really mean what they're supposed to mean. So to tell us that this infection is 95% effective is based on these numbers right when you look at them just on plain paper, right? But when you start putting all these different variables in, it starts to make that number either valid or invalid. And so again, I can't speak on any of that until I finish doing my research. But at the end of the day, these are just my initial questions. So I think that's a great question, Erica. Let me know if I answered that, because I really don't have all the answers, but I do understand your concern. And if I were you, Shirley X and D. Muhammad, thank you for coming in. If I were you, I would try to, get as much time as you can and get as much information as you can over these next few days. And of course, by the time I do my show next Tuesday, before you take that vaccine, because I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to tell anybody not to take it. I'm not going to tell anybody to take it. But I can't come into any conclusions as of yet until next Tuesday. I shouldn't say Tuesday. Thursday, I'm sure I'm going to be so full of information, I'm still going to have to pray, sleep, digest, absorb all the information. But I think more than likely by Friday, by the weekend, I will have come to my conclusion. And so publicly, I probably won't speak again until Tuesday on my show, where that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to read the information, digest the information. I'll probably have a few conversations with my colleagues, because sometimes we help each other understand things. Sometimes we will influence each other with truth. And so I'm going to do all that before I make any more public statements. But on Tuesday, when I make my public statements, I'm talking about where Brother Dr. Akili is coming from. I'm going to talk about where and how I made my conclusions, of course, based on these books and based on those two books. And I believe that those of you who trust me know that I'm going to do my diligence. It's like since last week, I felt such a responsibility. I've been reading, I've been studying, I've been looking at just about everything that's coming out. There are many of you that are sharing things with me, but I feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility to do the best I can. And on Tuesday, I believe that I will be making statements of where I am when it comes to this. So, Erica, let me know if I answered the question, and anybody else that heard Dr. Fauci speak tonight. Before I go into the rest of what I've learned in this FDA file so far, please let me know what you heard in that meeting with Dr. Fauci and whether or not you all came to any conclusions based on what you heard. So Shaolin Soldier says there can't be a one-size-fits-all for vaccines. Everyone is unique and therefore must provoke an individual response and or side effect. Dealing with mRNA has to be even worse and should prompt much longer testing, not shorter. Shaolin, my brother, always with the wonderful questions. I will say this, based on the research, and I did a couple of hours of research today specifically on the process of how they produce a vaccine based on an mRNA based on I'm sorry, versus what they did prior with the vaccines when they do attenuated or a dead thing or even live, right? So my conclusion is that I understand why they're saying that the mRNA vaccine is easier to produce. I also understand why they're comparing the mRNA vaccine to the DNA vaccine. But I think the point that you're making that is so powerful is the point that you're talking about. There is no one size fits all. And I agree. I say all the time that any doctor or any healthcare worker that tells people in general drink 8-ounce glasses of water, how could that be possible if you compare me to Shaq and compare me to a midget or a height challenge, whatever the politically correct word is? I'm not trying to offend anybody, but let's just say a person that's much shorter than me, okay? That person needs a different amount of water than I need a different amount of water than Shaq. And when it comes to medications, it's the same process. But so many times, as you are pointing out, Shaolin, these things that we push on to the public, whether it's medications, whether it's vaccines, whether it's ideologies, we don't tend to take that individual difference into consideration. And that's highly important. And that's why they did admit in the FDA files that there needs to be much more information and that things need to continue to be investigated to find out what are the long-term effects. But that's also why I say that these 3 books right here should tell Black, brown, and indigenous people, hey, we don't want to be a part of that. So you all go take that vaccine. You do what you want to do. And if there are any Black, brown, or indigenous people that want to put yourselves in that pot, go ahead. We'll watch and we'll see what happens to you. And then that information that we can take with the information that we've learned from these books, then we can start to come to conclusions. But to be a part of these trials, I can't suggest anybody do that, because this book right here taught me so much about how we've been tricked and fooled and misused, abused, and murdered by trials. With the experiences I have and the information that I'm reading, the information that I'm studying, and the people, as I've told you all before, I've met some people that were part of some of these things that are mentioned in this book. I have met some people who had family members that were in those Philadelphia prisons that had those experiments done on their bodies with all these skin products. So nobody can tell me that this information isn't true. Nobody can tell me that this information is worthless. Fauci nor Dr. McDougall, and both of them have made public statements about us forgetting about the past. You're a damn lie. Go tell that to the Jewish people that were misused and abused by the Germans. As I just recently heard, they, as far as within the last couple of years, have gone out and find people that are 100 years old or older than 100 years old, and they want to bring them to a place to prosecute them for what was done to them in those German concentration camps. But excuse me. But yet you want us to forget about what's done to us over 300 years. And many, many more millions of people killed than the 6 million Jews that were killed. This is not to put down theirs, but I'm not going to let anybody not pay attention to our Holocaust. Our Holocaust has been greatly part of our conclusions that we come to. And so no black person in America should ever be made to feel like my conclusion that I don't trust this medical industry is not absolutely a conclusion that should be respected. It should be. And the problem is that a lot of people haven't read this, haven't taken in consideration, and I'm talking about black doctors included, and that's why they allow themselves to be hoodwinked and bamboozled, because to me, I can't come to any conclusion based on what Dr. Fauci says. But the research that I've done on Dr. Fauci in my career and over the last few years is that I can't trust much of what comes out of his mouth. And so that's why I'm doing so much research over the next couple of days. And I will be coming to a conclusion after I do that. They say the vaccine is ready with no liability. Absolutely. The companies can't be sued and the government can't be sued, but there is the vaccine adverse effect reporting system, VAERS. You all get a chance to do some research. You can report your problems from a vaccine to them. And there have been billions of dollars paid out to people that have been injured by vaccines. Isn't that enough to be concerned? Isn't that enough for us to say, hey, pump the brakes a little bit and let's do a little more research? I believe that information warrants us to say, hey, let's be a little careful. Let's slow down a little bit. 35 Esmond Street. Your comment went away. Let me get back to it. You say they are messing with the live because what is being talked about? Hey, there's no question in my mind. Some of the stuff that is happening on my, I mean, it's really unexplainable, y'all, but I got to continue trying to get the information out as much as I can so we can have this type of conversation. And so, your brother's going to keep trying. Erica, thank you. Your words exactly. So I'm assuming that you're saying you agree. Lynn Ali, wa alaikum salam to you, and thank you for coming in. Malik 2012, El Malik Rasul Shabazz Muhammad, thank you, brother. So Stowell Rue Toussaint Fulton, first of all, I thank you for your efforts in making sure that I have all the information, because you've given me some information that kept me up to date. And you say, please, one, can you please provide an update to when there will be the follow-up interview with Brother Victor, who has studied coronavirus in the lab at NIH. His first interview on the Ultimate Wellness Group was quite informative, and given the vaccine is being released now, his promised follow-up interview is even more so critical and eagerly awaited. Can we expect it soon, especially since many people are and living since people's work and living situations, which make them in line to get the vaccines within the next days and weeks. Yes, I have been in contact with Brother Victor. He is willing and desires to come on the show so we can have a further discussion. The problem with Brother Victor is he does travel out the country a lot because he's doing a lot of work in the motherland. And so, it's sometimes difficult to get him at a time frame, for us to nail down. But I definitely will be in contact with him. I'll be talking to him. My plan was to talk to him this week about when we're going to schedule the show. And so absolutely, we will definitely do that. I appreciate that question. And of course, definitely we will be working at it. Okay. So thank you again. So let me just go through a little bit of what I found in the information that I was reading. And then we're going to talk about this book club. And I think it will be almost time to get off of here. But again, please do as much research. And I'm really talking to the scientists, the doctors, the scientists. We really got to take our time, go through this information so that we are sure that the information that we get on Thursday will be able to educationally and knowledgeably decipher through what we are hearing. Okay. So let me go through a few of these things. Some things that I was surprised about, and then some things that I'm not surprised about. Okay. Two things that they say that this vaccine is supposed to be the outcomes, right? And the first one is that this vaccine will prevent COVID in people that are 16 years or over. And it's, I think, necessary to say that they're not saying that preventing a person from getting the infection is going to stop potential outcomes. So, they're saying that it's going to decrease a person expressing the symptoms of COVID, like the cold and the flu and things like that, but they still may have some other things if they get it. And then the other thing, I made a mistake. The purpose of this meeting on Thursday is to talk about the vaccine and its prevention of COVID in 16-year-old people and older. The second aspect is, do the benefits outweigh the risks? And I know that some of you have heard me before on the show talk about when we choose an antibiotic, when we choose a blood pressure medication, when we choose a diabetes medicine, when we choose to go in and do a procedure in a person, when we choose or suggest that a person go through a surgery, the purpose of making that decision is that the benefit is supposed to outweigh the risk. And so when we come to a conclusion, we say, if you have this surgery, 70-80% of the people that have this surgery do better when they have this problem. We choose this medication because 80% of people in this certain age group, in a certain ethnicity, in certain race benefit from this medication, and it improves whatever the case we're using the medicine for, diabetes, high blood pressure, whatever the case may be, right? And so it's the same thing with this vaccine, and they're saying that this meeting is to present the information for us to come to the conclusion that the benefit of us taking this vaccine is better than the exposure of getting COVID without the vaccine. That's what it's supposed to be giving us the information and for us to come to a conclusion on Thursday, right? So to me, those are valid reasons to have a meeting. I can't question that. So we all know that this whole thing, the pandemic, was mandated on March 11th of 2020, and on the 13th, it was made a public emergency. When it comes to this vaccine that they're making, 70% of the sequence of this current vaccine is similar to the SARS-CoV. I'm sorry, the COVID vaccine, not the COVID vaccine, the COVID infection, the actual particle that they are taking this RNA from is 70% the same sequence as the SARS-CoV-1, which is the SARS-1. And then it's 50% the same as the Middle Eastern coronavirus infection. So I think that's pretty interesting that you know these things are so similar over these years. It's supposed to be impossible to predict these type of viral infections, but yet there's a high similarity in these past infections and what is going on now. Again, as you all have heard me say, the spike protein that is on this COVID vaccine is directly binding to the human ACE receptors, angiotensin converting enzyme receptors, which are very important all over the body for blood flow and how we regulate blood flow. I think that is extremely interesting as well, because most vaccines don't specifically attack any specific part of the body. They just attack cells in general. So this is definitely something that lends to the idea that there has been some human intervention, right? The next thing is that it is now official from my perspective, right? I've been telling people that I've heard a lot about these nanoparticles. I have done some research about nanoparticles in the past, but I haven't had any evidence that there is nanoparticles in this vaccine, but their information says it is. There are lipid nanoparticles, meaning that they're nanoparticles associated with the lipid system, which is the fat system of the body, right? And if you all heard me do the show on, what was it? The hormonal system. I talked about the way that the body harbors a lot of toxins in the fatty tissue. And most of the hormonal, not most of, all the hormonal organs of the body are fat-based tissues. So that's a consideration that I'm taking and saying, got to ask some questions about. Number one, what are these nanoparticles going to do? Are they controllable? A lot of people are asking these questions about nanoparticles and 5G. I've done research in the past, and there are, of course, nanoparticles that can be controlled and sent to certain organs of the body. These things do have a lot of questions that we need to ask. One thing that was surprising to me is that this vaccine is preservative free. That is very interesting, because that was one of my major concerns, because in my previous research, and especially again, reading a book like this one, Are Vaccines Safe? A lot of the information in that book talks about the dangers of the preservatives. And of course, this book right here is specifically talking about the mercury-based preservatives. And so, of course, that is a major aspect of my concern about this vaccine. And so the fact that it doesn't have preservatives is, I would say, probably a little breath of fresh air, but there's so many other questions. One of them being that the freezing that they're doing to it is an aspect of preserving, right? Because that's what you do when you freeze things, you are preserving them. So that's the other aspect of it. You're freezing it at these very low temperatures, but what happens when you inject that into a body that's at 98 degrees, right? What is the process that happens? We know RNA is a very fragile molecule. And so when you put it in the body, and it has to go from that cold environment to a warm environment, right? Because you are diluting it in the vial. So that's bringing the temperature up. And then they say that it must be used within 6 hours of dilution, because of the fact that it can be so unstable that it can just start to, fall apart, not be effective. Then what is it happening inside the body? These are all questions. Of course, I haven't finished doing my research. I'm just letting you all know what I will be doing over the next couple of days, right? And there's a statement that I think is very, very, very important that we have to consider as a people. In their statement, they say there is no adequate, approved, and available alternative to the product being the vaccine, for diagnosing, preventing, or treating this disease or condition. That's a pretty powerful statement to take in consideration, in that you haven't, as a government, haven't done a lot of research and haven't tried to push research as you're trying to push this vaccine. You haven't done research on interferon. You haven't done research on vitamin C, vitamin D, on zinc, selenium, some of the natural things that, of course, when you read How to Eat to Live, all of those things I just finished mentioning, zinc, selenium, vitamin C, vitamin D, good nutrition that comes from food. We haven't done, how come we're not pressing to do that type of information? How come we're not pressing to get better quality foods in the Black, brown, indigenous, and poor communities, right? We probably can spend less money on that than we're spending on these billions on these vaccines. So I thought that was an interesting statement that they made in there, because they're saying that it's the only alternative that's going to make a lot of money. Yes, but not the only alternative. No, I don't believe that. So that's it. Those are my notes up to this point. Again, I am on page 12, so I have plenty more reading to do. That makes 49 pages of one and 93 pages on the other document. So I will definitely be doing my diligence. Probably going to be a whole lot of studying over the next few days and very little sleep. But the reality is that those of you who I do this for, those of you who continue to come back, ask great questions, those who trust in me, I feel absolutely responsible to do this. As I said, I don't necessarily think that today with this meeting with Dr. Fauci and the Black community, I don't believe the adequate questions were asked. So quickly, if there are any of you that agree with that or disagree, let me know. But I'd like to know what you all think if you heard it. Terrell Muhammad, wa alaikum assalam, thank you for coming in. You say no one can argue with the numbers. Please let me know what you mean specifically about that. My brother Sharif Muhammad, thank you for coming in. You say yes, sir. Of the known side effects you mentioned, sounds like known side effects of COVID anyway. Absolutely. And I would also add to your statement, sister, that's the common side effects of any type of major threat on the human body, right? Because if you just get the normal cold, the normal flu, or a lot of people that have autoimmune disorders, these type of side effects are common with those, right? Let's take out injection site reactions and just talk about fatigue, headache, muscle pain, chills, joint pain, and fever, right? That's a cold, that's a flu, that's sometimes food poisoning. And as I say, many people that I've experienced over my 25 years of practicing will say these type of things when they have autoimmune disorders. And there is an aspect of the medical community that is asking the type of questions: are vaccines associated with autoimmune disorders? And it was posed in this book that we read. Are vaccines safe? Right? And so that definitely is something that we have to take in consideration, because again, this information so far is just a few months. But if we're concerned about what a vaccine is going to do after a year or 6 years or 10 years or 20 years, then we're nowhere near getting the type of information that we are concerned about. And then, as I have said before, when it comes to autism specifically and mental retardation or other neural development problems, a lot of times children and their parents will describe, my child got that shot this morning, and within hours, I see them staring off in the space. Within hours, long periods of time with fevers. Within hours, I see my child limp in the bed. Within hours, I see my child writhing in pain, screaming and hollering. So those are some aspects that I've heard over the years that happen pretty short term. And so, yes, if you have done research for 6 weeks or 2 months and you haven't seen those things, that's pretty beneficial from a short-term perspective. But these type of symptoms that I described, I would be more concerned about what's happening down the line, right? And then again, we have to also consider that if they are saying that there's no squalene, I'm not squalene, if there are no preservatives, my concern is that in the past, squalene was associated with Gulf War syndrome. Monosodium glutamate is in a lot of these vaccines. You have polysorbate, which are industrial cleaners that are associated with infertility. They're in a lot of these vaccines from the past. Of course, we know about mercury and aluminum, which in what we're reading here, I don't necessarily have time to go into it today, right? But we'll finish this book next week. And before I get off, I'm going to talk about the book club. But this book, in the pages that we read since last week, got into the additive effect that aluminum has on mercury in causing neurotoxicity, right? And so all of these type of preservatives, and there are many more that we could discuss, those are the concerns causing short-term problems, but they also are associated with long-term problems. And so, I did read the last section that I read right before I had to, do some final preparations for the show and then get on the show. There were some concerning chemicals that are part of the process. But again, I'll have to finish my research about that. And so I'll talk about that next week. Thank you all that are mentioning the audio. I apologize again. Next week, be in a better place to make sure we get all the Wi-Fi we need. Child and Soldier said, "Thank you very much, my brother. No voluntary trials for me or mine." Yes, sir. I cannot question anybody's decisions one way or the other. Again, I respect your decision. Anybody that makes a decision one way or the other, I just don't think that we're in a time where you can straddle the fence, right? You got to make a decision. And if some of you are determining what your decision is going to be based on what I'm going to say, I take that responsibility passionately. And again, the next couple of days and through the weekend, I will be doing my diligence to be a worthwhile person to give some feedback. Deborah Hatter Grant, thank you for coming in. You said, I watched the interview with Dr. Fauci earlier this evening, and my mind has not changed one bit so far. I was offended by how he referred to the things done to Black folks in the past as myths. Yes, ma'am. And how we shouldn't let things that happened in the past prevent us from protecting ourselves and our families by taking this vaccine. Things are still happening to us. It's not in the past. The whole push to accept the vaccine is a grand experiment as far as I'm concerned. I am considered to be, sorry, but the rest of your comment didn't come through. So let me know what the rest of it is, please. But I would agree with you. I can't necessarily use the word offended, and I'm not saying that against what you're saying, Sister Deborah, but I will say that the fact that Dr. McDougall and his little small segment that he had on whatever show that was, he was on, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and then what Dr. Fauci said today, it doesn't surprise me. So I'm not necessarily offended by what they're saying, because I believe they're part of a propaganda push to push this whole thing on Black people. And they continue to use the words about mistrust and, oh, that was in the past. No. The type of experimentation that this book is talking about right here is occurring to date. And if you all get a chance, go to the Ultimate Wellness Group, THEE Ultimate Wellness Group, and I posted just a short video of Harriet Washington, the author of this book, and it was years ago, but it was her interview on NPR, where she discussed her book, why she got involved in doing the book, what her process was in the book, and she's very, very passionate about not allowing experimentation to go back into the prisons. There's no question in her mind, my mind, and many other people that there are many experiments that are occurring in the prison industrial complex. And so we can't sit and say, the stuff that happened in slavery and the stuff that happened in the 1800s and then the Tuskegee experiment, as if our mistreatment from the medical industry stopped then, and stopped because Bill Clinton and his lying self came and supposedly apologized to Black people. There have been no reparations to that family that I know of, to any of those families. And as Harriet Washington said, those people that were responsible for producing the Tuskegee experiment, they're dead now, but they have never gotten any retribution for what they did on purpose. There was never a question is if they made a mistake. They did those experiments purposely. And I will say, if you haven't read this book, then you won't understand the statement that I make that as the Tuskegee experiment is, people, not only the cream, the skin products in the Philadelphia prisons, but the experimentations that were done on us, the experiments that were done on slaves where they were operated on with no anesthesia, the type of gynecological things that were done to black women over many, many years with no anesthesia. You can't say that the Tuskegee experiment is the worst, but the reason why people keep bringing up the Tuskegee experiment is because your research has been limited. Your research is limited, and so you're only speaking of what you know. And so I'm not knocking anybody for that, but what we should do is a little further investigation, and then we'll start talking about a whole bunch of different experiments. And we'll also have to start talking about the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, the one that we'll be listening to on Thursday, and HRSA. We'll have to look at all of these organizations, and most importantly, the American government, and that they are the hidden hand behind so many of these things.